Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1, action.
Assume nothing.
Brash, bald-faced blasphemy.
Question everything.
I find it extremely hard to imagine.
Open your eyes.
It is quite all right to be an atheist.
The fastest growing group of people in the country has been measured as being those who have no belief or who are atheists.
You don't have to be apologetic or quiet about it.
Challenge the opposition.
You see religion on 100 fronts losing the argument.
And start thinking. This is The Thinking Atheist Worldwide.
I have been looking forward to tonight all day. Just a chance to hang out with you and just talk about religion in the workplace. It's something most everyone can relate to. Well, I say most everyone here in the States. I've gotten quite a few emails from overseas. A lot of people from Europe say it's not a problem here. And I hear that a lot from people in that part of the world. They're like, not a problem here. It's only a problem if you say you are religious. But there are so many exceptions to that particular rule that it provides enough material to probably do half a dozen shows. My email inbox was completely packed. And I just got to it late this afternoon. I'm funneling through the other emails for those who have been sending email in for any reason. Bear with me. I'm way behind. A lot of the correspondence that continues to come in has to do with the discussion we had with the apologist, Cy Tim Bruggencay. That was weeks ago. The show was called Proof That God Exists. Heads exploding everywhere. Continue to explode. Some people say, I'm so impressed with how you handled that whole thing. And other people say, why didn't you destroy him? Or why didn't you say this? Or here's my refutation. Or here's what I would have done. So I'm getting so many emails about that. And then the homeschooling podcast last week, a very polarizing topic. And I'd say the majority, 75% of the input I've gotten has been positive, and the rest has been not so much. And most of them homeschoolers who felt that I wasn't balanced enough and didn't give enough accurate secular examples of what homeschooling can be, what it is, and how it has been done successfully. And so those people tore me a new one. So I'm like, okay, fine. And on top of that, we're getting ready for Imagine No Religion 2. That conference is in like 2.5 weeks, going to Kamloops on the weekend of May 18th. Going to go way up to Canada. And then the Oklahoma Free Thought Convention 2 is in June on the 23rd. We're prepping an event. There's some stuff going on in Colorado on Labor Day weekend. Little Rock on, I want to say it's October the 27th. They're all melding together. They're all just mush in my head. If it wasn't for my daytimer and my iPhone, I'd just be lost. Just think, help me. I'm having trouble keeping up these days, but it's the best problem to have so much happening, to have so much input and so many people engaging. It is really exciting. And it's, I had a chance to kind of pop into the forum tonight on thethinkingatheist.com and just say hi and thanks to the people out there who were using the forum. I never really get a chance to go in there and engage. I just don't have the time. And I was getting a reminder, you might want to run in there and just say hi. And it was a real pleasure for you, for listening, for going to the website, for supporting the charity drive. I think we hit 28,000 on our goal toward 30. I'll leave the links up. I mean, I know April's over with, so I didn't make April, but still $28,000 for charity? In my wildest dreams, if you'd have told me a year ago we would have done that, I'd just been said, nah, not really. And I can't tell you, I had many naysayers on this charity drive. Well, you don't have any celebrities. You don't have any hook. You don't have an angle. You're not doing something special. You're just doing what? Facebook and YouTube? You're not going to make that. Well, we didn't, but we got real close, 28 grand. And I think we're at just over 16,000 for charity water. And I want to say 13 for responsible charity. And I think those links at this moment are still at thethinkingatheist.com. It was awesome. I mean, just an amazing time. And I want to say thanks. Thanks for everything. Thanks for the words of encouragement. Thanks for the criticism. It's funny. I'm doing a revisit of my video, The Center of All Things. I believe I released it in December of 2010. One of my most popular videos. I was kind of trying to get in touch with my inner Sagan, right? And I put a lot of time and effort and money and everything else into it, and it was picked up and forwarded and has become one of my most popular pieces. And there's something about it that has bothered me. And I want to show it in Canada at the event here in a few weeks. And I thought, shit, now's the time to do it if ever. I'm going to fix it. The thing I did not like about it in that video was me. I'm the narrator. The EQ was kind of splattered on the vocal. I'm not sure if it was late. Was I in a hurry? Why did I let that slide? And honestly, I in my mind had heard a different voice. I wanted more gravitas. I wanted someone a little older, had more of a regal sound. I wanted some kind of National Geographic kind of a sound for it. You know, if I can't get Morgan Freeman, I want someone who's got that rich, authoritative sound that's not me. And my voice is good for a lot of different kinds of videos. But on this one, it drove me nuts. So I hired a guy this week who does work for the National Geographic Channel, and he is really good. And he's not cheap, but he's really good. And I will unveil the retooled Center of All Things video in Kamloops at the Imagine No Religion 2 event at the end of my speech. It's funny, you know, I'm just babbling here. It's funny prepping that speech, being a producer, being a visual guy. I go and I watch some people do a speech, right? They go up and they just flap their gums for 45 minutes. I have to have visuals, and I have to have a lot of them. A lot of them. Some of them are for humor. Some of them are just for visual impact to reinforce what's being said. Some are for tempo. Some just to engage the audience, to give them something to look at. And I can't do them halfway. I can't just type it into Titler and enter. Oh, no. You know what? This one needs a gradient background with a drop shadow and these 15 elements in there, and this would be great. That's one slide. My free OK presentation last year, and I think the ones I've done after that, average in the neighborhood of 50 different slides. For the next ones coming up, and they move quick, folks. I'm looking at about 85. I mean, you know, I'm just saying bam, 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 just one after the other. That sucker's going to move. I guarantee no matter what happens, you won't be bored. But it does take a while to put together, so it's just been a roller coaster ride. And some of you are going through a kind of a roller coaster at your place of businesses, if you'll pardon my ham-handed segue back into the actual topic at hand as we talk about religion in the workplace. And I want to start with a letter from Sue. She says this about her situation. She says, regarding inappropriate displays of religion in the workplace, the last place I worked was by far the worst. I was a project administrator for a big government transportation project. Although there was a policy that dictated we not discuss or display anything religious, there were so many flagrant violations, it was ridiculous. Religious posters, calendars, and tchotchkes on open display in co-workers' cubicles and offices, overtly religious jewelry and clothing with Bible quotes and imagery emblazoned on them, and openly religious conversations I could easily hear from my work area. One very loud woman shouting, "God bless you," every time someone would sneeze. I have a lot of allergies. Oh, no. It was torturous, always trying to stifle my sneezes just to keep from inadvertently prompting the sayer of that idiotic phrase. Sue continues. A couple times I found religious materials between 30 to 50 pages left in the copier, along with the 50 double-sided collated full-color copies of said materials. Not only violating the never use the copier for personal crap policy and wasting a lot of paper and colored toner, but clogging up the queue. thus preventing anyone else from printing or copying anything, even when we were slammed with serious deadlines to meet on our deliverables. Don't even get me started on the holiday, quote, decorations. She says one of the worst offenders in the office would often quote bits of scripture during meetings and conversations that were otherwise actually related to our work and necessary to complete projects, pray audibly over his food in the cafeteria or at his desk, and have loud, casual conversations about the latest trip his youth group took to spread the word of Jesus to the godless heathens in Mexico or something. Evidently, he was the leader of this group, and several times a year he would hit me up for money to fund their missions. The least offending guy was a Muslim who would reserve time in one of the conference rooms to quietly and discreetly pray. Another Muslim in the same office, however, would sometimes pray in the copy room or adjoining storage area with the lights off, and then act surprised when I'd walk in and turn on the lights, like I did several times a day, with the intention to retrieve supplies or make copies, because doing so was kind of like a necessary part of my job. I'm sure anyone can imagine how jarring it is to walk into a dark room, turn on the lights, and have a large man suddenly jump up off the floor. Sorry, Sue. I'm sorry. It was so startling. A couple times I nearly peed my pants. I mean, like, why pick such an oft-used public space for what I assume is supposed to be such a private ritual? The copy room storage area was the third busiest shared space in the whole office after the break room and the restrooms. Or if it's not such a private ritual, why not simply join the other guy in the conference room? They were cousins, for crying out loud. Would it have been so difficult to coordinate a private space for something so important to them? But even if that was the only space in the entire building available for him to use, why not put up a sign or string tape across the doorway to let people know he's in there before they breeze in and get the shit scared out of him? All of this made me feel very uncomfortable, Sue says. But I was afraid that if I complained or reported anyone, that I would lose my job. Because, you see, the people running HR were some of the worst offenders, and the violations were so prevalent throughout that whole place, it seemed to me it would have been much easier to replace one person, me, than to have to expect everyone else in the office to stifle their need, quote-unquote need, to openly express themselves. I never said or did anything that would indicate I wasn't religious, because I had a strong feeling that doing so at that particular office would be interpreted as an open invitation for hostility and or discrimination. And seriously, all I wanted to do was just show up, do my job, get paid, and go home. It was already stressful enough. I didn't want to further complicate the situation. Incidentally, I did wind up being laid off after I developed a sensitivity to the chemicals and the cleaners and fragrances in the office, and it started seriously affecting my physical health. And gee, why am I not surprised that instead of asking people to tone down the perfume and air fresheners and incense and toxic cleansers, they instead simply disposed of the one person who dared speak up about it. So even though I'm currently out of work, I'm so glad I don't work in that horrible, hostile, toxic environment anymore. Sue finishes by saying, I know there are websites specifically designed to help Christians find jobs. I presume that overtly Christian companies and churchgoers can network with other people at their church to find work amongst their own kind. But I really wish there was a source of information for non-religious people to help them find decent jobs at places that are either strictly non-religious or safe, neutral, and very serious about upholding their policy of keeping religion out of the workplace. If you know of any, please let me know. Thank you. Sue, thanks for the letter. Probably an all too common story. And you hit on something that I think we'll hear more of later on in the show. What happens when the HR department, what happens when the hirers and the firers and the owners and the movers, shakers and the managers and the supervisors, the people who are in charge of your personal and career destiny, who can decide whether or not you get a paycheck in a couple of weeks, what happens when they are religious? Now, as we've said before, discrimination so often happens in unprovable ways. They say that you're a poor communicator, or you had, a messy workstation, or you violated this policy. But what they really wanted was to get rid of you for another more covert reason. And so they just found another excuse to get rid of you. And I'm convinced it happens all the time. Now, some people use that as an excuse. Some people deserve to be let go. There are some people who will play the victim, and they honestly deserve to be handed a pink slip. But I really do believe there are others who are unfairly set aside and cast off because they are simply inconvenient. People don't like to be made uncomfortable. And the truth is, you're not the one really making them uncomfortable. They are simply uncomfortable. They are not dealing. They can be as overt and as loud as they want to be. That's fine. In fact, it's part of their great commission. And if they even know you don't believe, they become obsessed with it often. It's a very interesting dynamic, and unfortunately, it's all too common in the workplace. Let's take our first phone call of the show, 270. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hi, this is Josh. It's good to talk to you again, Seth. We met at the American Atheist Convention.
Up in D.C. Yeah, it was awesome. Fantastic.
Yeah, it was a really fun time. I had this job with the state. It was in the Medicaid office. And a lot of the people who were members of the Church of Christ. Now, for those unfamiliar with the Church of Christ, they really believe that they're the only way. Some of them made exceptions for the Baptists because they both believe in you got to get saved and all that stuff. Now, the worst offender was, of course, my supervisor. And I had actually found out that she had been reprimanded for supposedly harassing somebody about going to church. I was actually riding with my supervisor on the way to a meeting. And on the way to the meeting, she asked me, what denomination am I? And, of course, I knew exactly what she would be like if I said I'm an atheist. And an atheist friend of mine had actually said, oh, just say you're Episcopalian or something like that. That way you don't look like an extremist. So that's exactly what I did. I said, I'm Episcopalian. And she looked at me like, what's that? And I said, well, I know the services are a lot like the Catholic Church. And, of course, right then she looked horrified, so I might as well have just said I was an atheist. And she goes, were you raised Catholic? And I said, yes, I actually was. And, she looked horrified, and she just starts going on this rant about how Catholics are bad.
But you're on company time, right? She is your supervisor.
Yes.
Do you worry at this moment about your job? Are you thinking, will this have ramifications? What was going on in your head?
I was like, this is very uncomfortable, and this may very well have ramifications for my job. And on the way back from the meeting, she got out her gospel tunes on her iPhone and started making me sing them.
She did not. She made you sing gospel songs?
Well, she provoked me into singing them. She was just like,
whatever.
Okay,
Whatever.
She started out like saying, well, do you sing this gospel song in the Catholic Church? And the answer to all of them was no, because I never remembered that. And
well, take me to the end zone here. Did you get resolution? How did it come out?
Afterwards, she really started treating me very different. I was supposed to turn in my casework to her. She would review it. Well, I would give them to her for review. She'd never give them to me. So, this work was always being turned in late. She would snap at me, and I even had one employee said, wow, she never snaps at anybody. She would give me assignments that were unnecessary.
I get you. She was stacking the deck against you, setting you up for failure. How is it now?
And I did get fired, and I'll tell you that I did get fired. And although I did sue.
Is that still going on?
Attorney. Actually, it was surprisingly quick. What the state did, well, they said, well, we'll destroy any files that she said that were bad about me. They take away that I was terminated, and I would basically be able to apply for another state job, which I'm in the process of doing.
Well, I wish you the best. I appreciate you sharing a very honest perspective. I'm sorry it's been kind of a tough road. I'll be curious to see how many other callers' experience line up with yours, man. But it was good to meet you at the American Atheist Convention, and thanks again for being a part of the show, man.
Well, thank you.
Take care of yourself.
You too.
253, thanks for waiting. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hi, this is Trisha.
Trisha, What do you got for us today?
Actually, I work as a nanny / in-home therapist for a 6-year-old autistic boy, and it's a religious family, but, I just know they're religious. If they're anywhere near my Facebook page, they know I'm not. So it's just kind of a live and let live situation, but they do have religious things in the house that he likes and that he wants to read his, book about Jonah and the whale and all that stuff. And so it's just an interesting situation that I'm in, that I find myself reading about Jesus, and I know that he's taking it all as fact and that I'm kind of a part of it, which is an interesting situation. I love my job, and they're a wonderful family, but it's just kind of peculiar, I guess.
Essentially, you're under their care, right, under their charge. You have been hired to do a job, and that job includes reading the materials that they provide. It is kind of a catch-22. There's really not much of a way out. I mean, the right thing to do would not be, well, I refuse to read him this.
Well, yeah, exactly.
So do you find yourself in conflict over it? Like, God, I just want to just tell this kid, this is all a bunch of crap. I mean, or do you ever fantasize about it?
There are moments, because they have taught him to thank God for everything that he has, and I'm kind of like, well, it's kind of because your parents work hard every day to make sure you have food on the table and all these great toys and things you like to play with. But
so do they see his autism as a gift from God or a test from God? Do they talk about that at all? They
definitely see it as a gift and a challenge from God that they have been blessed with. So.
Like, in their weakness, he can be strong. In their adversity, this is just an opportunity for God to demonstrate his power, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You hear that silence? Well, it's an awesome, I think you have to have a special gift to do that kind of work. I have a tremendous amount of admiration for you. And the fact that you love it so much, I think, says a lot about you. Thanks for calling the show. I sure appreciate you.
Okay, thank you.
Take care. Had a letter from Jenny. She said, "Hey, Seth, I wanted to write in. I'm not sure how I got so lucky, but I live in Georgia, the freaking Bible Belt, and work with the only atheists and agnostics. I'm a body piercer at a tattoo shop, and I like to think that because creative and artistic people tend to be slightly smarter, it puts us at an advantage. We often discuss religion, especially with my boyfriend, who also works at the shop, and even poke fun at it a lot. Thank the FSM for this. As much as I like to discuss my beliefs with others, I'm not sure how I'd handle working with tons of religious folks. Guess I just got lucky. Thanks for the message, Jenny." Jessica said, "I'm a relatively new atheist, and religion permeates my workplace. People discuss God in passing with anyone and everyone around them, as though there is no such thing as non-belief. Believing in God to most of these people is as second nature as breathing. Just recently, my boss was stressing out because his young daughter had announced to her family that she's an atheist. Shock, horror, sound the alarms. To my boss, this was nearly equivalent to arson or homicide. All I said to him was, at least she's thinking. I'm an educator in the public school system, and I travel between a variety of schools. One of the schools I'm expected to work at is at a Christian school. Why is the government funding a Christian school as part of public education, you ask? Your guess is as good as mine. Students at this public school, quote-unquote public school, have daily Bible classes, regular chapel, and worship time built right into their schedules. I often find myself wondering what they took out of the curriculum in order to be able to fit these things in. When at the school, I'm subjected to prayers before and after every meeting, creepy posters of a Caucasian Jesus, and constant reminders that an invisible man in the sky is watching my every move. How much educational time would be inevitably saved if staff members devoted themselves to actually educating rather than indoctrinating kids with fairy tales? How do these schools exist in the public school system this day and age? Why do religious people feel the need to merge education and religion? Hardly synonymous. As a non-believer in God and a strong believer in the value of education, this is extremely frustrating to me. And it's extremely frustrating that as a public school educator, I would lose my job if I refused to work at this school. Then again, I'm positive that if the staff members at the school were aware that I'm atheist, it wouldn't take them long to break out the torches and pitchforks. They wouldn't allow me to work there anyway. I am sick of religion and belief in God being a given. I'm sick of going to professional conferences and having people get up and lead in Christian prayer. Would it be okay for someone to get up and lead a bunch of professionals in a Muslim prayer? Would Tim Tebow be as well received if he were Hindu? People have a right to believe what they want to believe, but so too do we have a right not to believe and to not constantly be subjected to religious fanaticism in the workplace. It's like PDA. Nobody needs to see you taking care of business. Get a room. Jessica, it's a great message. Thanks for the email. Area code 847. Thanks for waiting. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Josh.
Josh, thanks for waiting. What's up?
I'm noticing a theme that a lot of people and a lot of stories are kind of geared towards government workplaces, and I'm about to add to that. I work for an arsenal. One of my coworkers had a postscript that she would always add to every email that always read, "If God leads you to the edge of a cliff, trust him fully and let go. One of two things will happen. Either he will teach you to fly or he will catch you when you fall."
This was on a company signature?
Yes, this is how she signed every email. And I personally found it really annoying and kind of insulting, because if anybody leads me to the edge of a cliff, I'm not going to trust them anymore. So anyway, after a while, I replied to one of her emails and added my own postscript and read something like, "If God leads me to the edge of a cliff, one of two things will happen. Either I will turn around because I don't want to die, or I will pack a parachute because skydiving is fun."
Let me ask you this. You know, some people get their panties in the wad about a coworker having a cross or something on their cubicle, and that kind of thing's never really bothered me. I mean, I know that if they say should be no displays of religious this or that, but let's say you work in a place where you don't have client traffic coming in, your cubicle, it's just your little home for 8 hours a day, and you can kind of, you can hang a rabbit's foot up. You can put up whatever you want, whatever blows your skirt up, whatever makes you happy, as long as you don't throw it over at me. I'm pretty easy. Am I too soft on that, you think? Do you think, what's your perspective?
I'm the exact same way. There's a whole bunch of people that, they'll have like a Bible verse or something hanging up in their cube. I mean, I don't care. They're surrounding themselves with something that makes them feel comfortable, whatever. But it's as soon as they start sending this stuff to me. It's like the postscript that one woman was sending me, it sounded almost like instructions or an order. If this happens, you should do this. And I say, no. And I followed up my postscript with just a simple request: do not send me any religious messages. If I want to get preached to, I'll go to a church. After that, I don't know if she stopped sending that postscript, but she didn't send it to me anymore.
Do her supervisors know that she's sending out company emails that have a favorable slant toward any specific religious belief on them? I mean, if I was a supervisor, I'd certainly want to know that. So
I actually did send it up the ranks, and I wanted to know just if there was some kind of guidelines in which this would be considered inappropriate. And the answer that I got back was no, that she was perfectly fine.
I think you do have to choose your battles. If you walk around and you get freaked out over a lot of, if people could just keep it in their own space, it'd be one thing. But the minute they become overt, which they are commanded to do, right? They're not supposed to be an island unto themselves. They are supposed to spread the good news. And that's when it becomes a problem. Still like your job, though? You good?
Oh, my job is awesome.
Of course it's awesome. You work in an arsenal.
Yeah, I help build cannons, artillery, armor kits. I see some of the craziest, fully automatic weapons before some of the soldiers do, because I'm helping to develop them and build them. I mean, my job.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
It's great. I love it. I get to invent stuff all day long.
Make a note here. Don't piss him off ever. Okay, I got it. Hey, thanks for the call. Much appreciated.
All right, have fun.
Works for an arsenal. That would almost be as awesome as being a Mythbuster, which I consider to be the single greatest job in the history of all jobs forever. Some people flip out about the small stuff. Oh, so-and-so wore a cross necklace to the office. They have a cross earring, or they have a cross this, or they have a crucifix on their cubicle table. They pasted a scripture verse up or something. I don't really care. It doesn't bother me. I just feel like personally, now this is just me, there's so many other things that are worthy of my time and attention. Some of this stuff just feels small and petty and like a distraction. Am I saying that you should have signatures on your emails going out to represent the U.S. government? No scriptures or little happy Jesus bumper stickers or footprints in the sand or, 7 days without Jesus makes 1 week. Those types of little phrases that people put on their emails or on Facebook that are supposed to inspire you. They don't belong at the bottom of a company signature. They just don't, and it should be certainly called out. But the small stuff that people do that doesn't really go out of their cubicle, whatever. Want to light little candles? Whatever. You want little verses from whatever? Knock yourself out. I don't know. Am I wrong? Dustin sent an email. He said, I work at a non-specific worldwide retail store, which is actually well known for its position on personal expression and individuality. Lately, the topic of religion has come up by coworkers. I like to think of myself as a rather confident, pronounced atheist, and I expressed my views within reason, not pushing or preaching outright to them. Nearly every day, I'm now bombarded with religious rhetoric. Nothing that is malicious but downright annoying and inspires me to facepalm several times a day. I've told these coworkers I don't need religion, and I'm rooted firmly to my decision to reject any notion of a God, and they still persist to act judgmental. Should I take it to the next step and talk to HR? I consider them work friends, and I don't want to make my daily work life awkward, yet I believe I have the right of freedom from religion as well. And he signs his name, Dustin, fellow atheist among the blind. Well, only you can determine whether or not that's a good move. It really depends a lot on your situation, depends on how overt they are, depends on the supervisors you would be speaking to, who makes up the HR department. I mean, honestly, it's a political world. You're going to have to probably evaluate those and decide exactly what your pain threshold is. If it's just a few asides here and there throughout the week, whatever, find a way to stick it right back at them. But, if it's nonstop, if it's affecting work, if it's affecting the environment, no contest. I worry about my atheism. I love my job. I've been there for years. I started in 2003, and I'm a professional video producer. And I love my job. I love the people that I work with. I just love them to death. I worry, when I started, I was still a believer. 2003, I was in that denial phase where you just check out. You don't really participate. But you would never fathom that you would ever totally reject the idea of God. It's that weird safe zone. Well, I believe in God, but I'm not religious. And I would sometimes stand in front of, there were a few times, hundreds upon hundreds, close to 1,000 people at a time representing my organization. And I would do so to a group of religious people. We would say, we can produce videos for your church or your faith-based organization or your ministry or what have you. And I'm a communicator. It's what I do. It was one of the assets that I was able to bring to the company, and it's something that I enjoyed. I enjoyed people. And they were wonderful people. These church people were salt of the earth people. They just were pastors and directors and what have you. So imagine this. I mean, this is a relatively public part of my job. And that cauldron is boiling under the surface for me. And I'm thinking more and more, oh, this doesn't add up. This doesn't add up. This doesn't add up. And more as I deal with the church environment and travel all around the country, serving churches in a production capacity, I began to see it more objectively. It was almost like an experiment where you're looking through the glass, right? You don't have as much prejudice. You're not insulated. You're not inside. You're not protected. You're not conditioned. You walk in, you spend a few days, and you leave. And I honestly think that it helped me to move away, to see it more objectively. So I get to the point, as I approach the age of 40, where I just couldn't call myself a Christian anymore. And then I got to the next point where I was a champion for free thought. I began to campaign against the religion I had once held dear. But so many of our clients are religious. And I used to represent my company to thousands of them. What will happen to me? Well, I sort of took the Dan Barker route for a while. He preached in the pulpit for a couple of years, trying to figure out a way out. And he said he loathed himself sometimes because he felt he was being dishonest. And so he sort of mitigated his sermons. Wasn't as much about God, wasn't reading as much scripture. It was more about living a good life, living a happy life, trying to find some middle ground while he got his ducks in a row, found an exit strategy. Well, I don't want to leave my job. You know, we have some religious clients on the dock today, but we also have clients of all other kinds all over the world. There's plenty of other work for me to do. But and to their credit, the people that I work for who know about me, they know all about me. They know all about me and my site and my videos and these shows. I'm sure they've had meetings about me, have stood by me. They said, we'll stick with you. We'll stick with you. If we have a right to believe in God, you have a right to not believe in God. And for that, I am eternally grateful. I am so thankful that they see that I have just as much a right to be able to hold and express an opinion, a point of view, a worldview as they do. But when nobody's looking, when I have a chance to really think about it, I think about all the years and all the tens of thousands of air miles and all the videos, the hundreds of videos I've produced, all of the investment and the time and climbing the ladder. Here I am at the age of 44, and I have deep down this fear. What would happen? What would happen if my PR became damaging to the company? We had a client in Texas. He was a religious client, good man. I used to participate in some of the stuff that my company did for them. And he found out, I don't know, must have just through a Google search, must have, I don't know, I have no idea how he discovered me. He pulled all of his business. He just pulled it all. So it didn't just affect me, right? The company that I work for was penalized. My coworkers, their livelihoods were affected by what I do in my free time. If you look at it objectively, I have every right to host this show, to have my opinions, to put up a website, and the burden of proof is on the religious. Honestly, I think I'm on much stronger ground. And yet I am not an island unto myself. And what I do and say has consequences. And the last thing I want is for the consequences of what I do in my personal life and heart and mind to negatively impact other people and how they provide for their families. And heaven forbid, pardon the expression, it becomes all too inconvenient after a while. What happens if another client decides it's just not worth it? You heard he's an atheist. Yeah, I know. How could they keep him on staff? I don't know if I'd want to do business with a company like that. And they just stop calling. They take their contracts elsewhere. I mean, what happens if I become a liability? Middle-aged guy, out on his ass, right? The mortgage and a family and the whole shooting match. And this scenario is like many, many, many scenarios all over the world. People are weighing it out. I want to be true to myself. I have every right to say it. I have every right to stand up. I shouldn't have to be proselytized to at my place of business. But how much of a stink should I make? How quiet should I be? How much should I let on? How much should I reveal about myself? Should I play the game? There are no easy answers, are there? 314, thanks for waiting. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Mike.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for calling. What's going on?
Just kind of wanted to share with you in my opinion, it's a little bit of a funny story. I'm in college, so this was just a part-time minimum wage job at a local sandwich delivery company. And the manager was an open homosexual. We had members on staff of every religion out there, mainstream at least. We had Jews, we had Christians, we had Muslims on staff. I've been an open atheist for probably a year and a half now. And when they finally asked me, what are you doing for Christmas? Because this was last December. I tell them, I really am not doing much, just going to visit my family. I'm an atheist. A week later, I'm looking for a new job because they manipulated the time clock to say I was stealing from the company.
Do you have any recourse on that deal, or you were set up? You're saying funny story. I'm like, you got fired. That's tragic, man.
Personally, I found it, I look back at it now and laugh. I mean, yeah, right then it was a pain in the ass because Christmas was coming and I needed money for everything. I now look back at it and laugh because 2 months later, I got a job as a manager at the opening department store in town. I guess the fact is it was just a minimum wage job. I didn't really care for it. Personally, I find it funny now at this point.
Well, I'm glad it had a happy ending for you. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the call very much.
Yeah, you have a great one.
Take care. Let's see. On Skype, I've got, I think it's Skype, a 441 number. Hi, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hi, this is Lucy. I'm calling from the UK.
Thank you for calling. What do you have for us?
I just want to say I can't believe the stuff you have to put up with. In the UK, just none of this happens. None of it. If someone at work is not openly religious, people treat them like they've got a sort of mild mental illness, you know?
Well, people always send correspondence to me from Europe, and they say, if you are overtly religious here, we look at you like you're nuts. Is that really accurate? Is that true?
True. I mean, most people, as you know, we have like an established Church of England here, so most of us, when we've been at school, they've been Church of England school, so people sort of will say they're CFE, and if they get married, they'll have like 1 Corinthians 13 and a few hymns they remember from school. But people always get embarrassed if you mention religion, really.
So what do you think about when you hear the stories in America? Do you think we've all gone absolutely crazy?
No, not at all. I mean, I think your problem is the church here, very established, so it sort of fades into the background for us. Whereas I think in the US, you have people, churches sort of jostling for position. So they're much more obvious. People talk about it more, and they'll advertise their religion.
Is it that you are, not you necessarily, but your culture is privately religious, or they are not religious, period?
There are people that, you know, if you ask them, they'll say they're religious and that they're actually a believer. But I think, it sounds crazy, but I think for the main part, people don't even know what they think. They never think about it. We've got churches here that I don't know, 13th century and they're very pretty, so people get married in church. But it's more about the look of the thing, really. Most people only ever go to church for weddings and funerals. So that's the only time I ever think about it.
Well, if you were to visit here, it would not be uncommon to walk into a supposedly secular place of business and see religious icons, even on the exterior windows. Some of the businesses we have use that little fish, that little Greek fish. they incorporate it into their logo because that obviously builds credibility. If you have the Christian fish on your logo, well, you must be a reputable automobile shop or whatever you happen to be doing now has new credibility. So we're in a part of the world where not only is it common, quite often it is overtly incorporated into what is an otherwise supposedly non-religious business. It's pretty crazy. But I'm glad to hear your perspective, and I appreciate you calling the show. Anything else, or are you good?
Yeah, the one thing I want to add, this is going to sound strange. As you probably know, the Archbishop of Canterbury is our head religious honcho over here. But even he cannot make everyone in his office be a Christian. Not even him. That's how far it goes. People they would not tolerate being struck down from their job for their religion. It just would not happen over here, and I hope that's sort of a bit of comfort for you. Maybe, hopefully that's what's coming for the US as well.
I am hoping that the strides we take today and in the years ahead of us, the short years ahead of us, will make it a whole lot easier for the next decade.
You've got a way to go, but
yeah.
You'll make it.
You could say that. You could say we've got an uphill climb ahead of us. But my hope is that if we can put up with all the red tape and the bureaucracy and the pains in the ass and the crazy uphill climb it's going to be now, hopefully our freaking kids and grandkids won't have nearly as much of a hard time with all of this. I appreciate you so much. Thanks for being a part of the podcast today.
All right. Thanks, sir.
Take care. Let's see here. I've got another Skype call. It just says 111. Hi, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Sean.
Sean, thanks for waiting. What's up?
Well, just wanted to call in. I go to a Catholic school district, and the town that I live in the only schools available are Catholic schools. Pray every day, that sort of thing.
Where are you located, roughly? Give me the region. Where are you at?
Canada, in Alberta, about middle of the province. But it's a very Christian school, not so much, I guess, wouldn't really compare to what you would have down there. But the school district has fired a transvestite, and I think an atheist also, because they're required to pray every day to the class.
Now, I get mixed messages from my Canadian callers on the school system, and I guess it's determined by region, right?
What it is because we have both French and the English, the Catholic French and the English Protestants, what it was is you have the right to a Catholic or a Protestant school. But the town that I live in was settled by originally Catholic missionaries, so it's a Catholic community.
So it's everywhere. Pretty
Basically.
much. It's everywhere. Exactly. And they were required to pray at the beginning of the class, and because they did not, they were released?
It was just a school district thing. There's nothing requiring you to pray federally. It's just they believe that, so we have to pray to God every day,
Well, if it's not part of the law, then on what grounds are they dismissed?
They just do it. It's because they believe in God. It's sort of because I don't know how the school districts work down there. It's basically they pray here because they're a Catholic school district. That's basically the only reason they do it.
So it's a public school, but it's not. It's this weird dichotomy. I'm trying to work it out in my head. Everything's Catholic, but it's not really Catholic. That's got to be weird.
I live in a city of about 70,000 people. It's the school district here. The public one is the Catholic school district, but usually in other towns it's the Protestant school district, and they do not have religious class and they do not pray every day, but they're still the Protestant school district. It's only the Catholic one that does the praying, the religion class, and the funny because today my religion teachers said that if we have sex before marriage, we will die. I'm sorry. I'm just thinking in my head.
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb here, my friend. I'm going to say that your instructor is incorrect on that particular point.
I try to. She is just a little of a Bible literalist. Not all the teachers are like that. It's mainly just a few here and there that are.
If she's preaching out against sex, I'll give you $20 that she's hanging from a chandelier somewhere at 11:30 tonight. You know what I'm saying? Usually, if somebody's preaching out against something like that, that means they've got there's a skeleton in its closet, probably wearing a thong. You know what I'm saying?
You have to believe that Napoleon was one of the Antichrist. She has some weird beliefs.
Well, I'm glad to hear from another Canadian listener, and thanks for a great call. Take care of yourself, okay?
Take care.
We're going to do a whole episode on religious schools coming up here. We've got a pretty full early summer schedule. We're going to be talking about. We are doing a show on teenagers, and it'll be. We'll probably have the kids. I don't know. Use pseudonyms. They don't have to say who they are, where they're from. Honestly, it's this weird nebulous area that I don't want to trod upon the authority of parents by saying, kids, call us and vent about your situation. But at the same time, I've had so many young people say that they just want to be heard. And I believe they should be. And so I'm working out the logistics, whether we have a young, like a teenager moderating. We'll work it out so that it doesn't look like I'm what I don't want is for people to think I'm planting seeds of doubt into the minds of tomorrow's leaders, and it's all my fault. I don't mind, I don't mind standing up and saying, here's what I think, and here's the evidence to back it up. But I think I really want it to be more about the kids, about the young people doing. So that's coming up here. But we are going to talk about schools, and we're going to talk about religious schools. And you would be amazed, maybe you wouldn't be at this measure, what they do to and for children. I cannot believe she told them that if you have sex before you get married, you're going to die. It's kind of drastic. Isn't that up there with if you masturbate that hair will grow on your palms and stuff? You'll go blind. They just tell you that stuff to scare you because they think about it. We know whenever we did the religion and sexuality episode with Marty Klein and Daryl Ray. And if you haven't heard it, it's a fascinating show. And it made me feel like a total prude because I was listening to it going, oh, my God. But, they were talking about how the discrepancy between the ages that kids become sexually mature and the age of marriage is widening, right? Usually, I think the average is like a decade, at least, between the time that young people become sexually mature and the time that they get married is 10 years. Well, you got to be shitting me. I mean, they are flesh and blood, often hormone crazed young people. You are not going to keep them separated. You're just not. So what religious families tend to do is they put horror stories in place that if you engage in any of this carnal activity where you are giving into the desires of the flesh. Now, I'm not trying to minimize how serious sex is. I really think, especially at that age, you have to do a lot of educating. You have to do a lot. You really have to take measure of it. But telling them that they're going to die or some horrible physical consequence or that they will roast in the fires of hell for succumbing to what is a natural desire is not the answer. And it continues to amaze me to see how totally wrong the church gets the issue of sexuality. Glenn has a letter. He said, I've listened to all your podcasts and I've watched all your videos and I applaud them and I use some of them as references in discussions. Unfortunately, since I work on Tuesdays, I don't get a chance to listen live or call in. However, your upcoming podcast about religion in the workplace is something that does apply to my daily life at work. Glenn says, I have a very religious, born-again evangelist coworker who will regularly walk around work singing Christian songs and will have a Bible or a Bible study book at her workstation. I usually pay this no mind, as she usually doesn't let it interfere with her work. Recently, however, she's begun to proselytize to some customers in an effort to, quote, save them. We have a TV in our waiting room that's usually tuned to the History Channel, and during a special about cults, during the entire special, she would state over and over that the world needs more Jesus. A facepalm moment, to which I responded, no, the world needs more reason and critical thinking, a comment she ignored. At work, I'm considered the go-to guy for answers on a lot of things, from technical issues to basic science questions. I'm an aerospace engineering, planetary astrophysics major in college. It will take me some 8 years to complete my double master's and decide whether I want to go for a PhD. Recently, this coworker started talking to me about the archaeological truth, quote unquote, archaeological truth of the Bible, to which I responded that aside from some of the geography and culture, which is corroborated by contemporary secular historians, there is no biblical story that is wholly substantiated or corroborated by any contemporary secular historian, nor is there any archaeological evidence that supports the fables and myths in the Bible either. She attempted to cite the existence of the Göbekli Tepe Temple, Gobekli Tepe Temple complex near Mount Ararat in Turkey, with its supposed depictions of many different animals as proof of the biblical flood and of the existence of Noah. After which I referred her to the worldwide geological record and the fact that there is no evidence nor record of any worldwide flood. When conversation eventually and inevitably turned to evolution, she tried to claim that evolution has no explanation for the giraffe or the woodpecker or the bombardier beetle. After which I referred her to Aaron Ra's series on YouTube about the foundational falsehoods of creationism, and told her I could research, or even she could research or talk to a biologist and be able to trace the evolution of all the animals she just cited. During all these conversations, she would always ask, what kind of evidence would I need to prove the truth of the Bible? After which I explained the scientific method and what a fact is, and that all evidence must be measurable and or testable and or observable and always demonstrable and able to be independently verified, and that thus far every single evidence for the, quote, truth of the Bible has failed all of the criteria for evidence. Day after day, I'm hounded by questions and veiled attempts at proselytizing the questions I don't mind answering if I have the answer on hand. Otherwise, I'll state I'll find the answer, but that I don't know at the moment. However, the preaching and constant praises to God and Jesus, especially while I am researching and viewing new discoveries about the universe from, say, the NASA website, have started to get to me. I've told her that it does bother me that she attributes everything to God, and thus, in my mind, lessens the wonder and awe of the universe. And she'll back off for a bit, but then start right back up later. There's a glimmer of, dare I say, reason on the horizon, in that she's beginning to understand what is meant by fact and evidence. I honestly will never care what a person believes, but as soon as someone tries to claim as fact something that never has been or could most likely ever be evidently supported and therefore must be taken on faith, that is the moment I take issue, and will attempt to show where the line of thinking is flawed, and that there would need to be a present evidence to support such a claim. If I can get someone to at least think before making a claim, or even preface with, I believe, then I've at least helped to teach someone something about critical thinking and reality. Keep up the good work. Let reason win the day. Glenn, hopeful future planetary scientist. Glenn, you are awesome. Going for the double masters. And a champion for science and reason. That's just fantastic. Thank you so much for the message. 612, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. What's your name?
Hey, Seth. My name's Larry.
What's going on?
Two quick things. One, I wanted to thank you for sharing your experience coming out as an atheist and how that unfortunately adversely affected your business.
I had a difficult time deciding that obviously, my people can listen in anytime and hear my show. But I think if I'm going to ask other people to be transparent about their situations, I should certainly be prepared to do my own. Does it resonate with you at all?
A little bit. So I can segue into the second point I was going to make.
Yeah.
I work for a bank, and one of the things that our bank is doing is we're starting to cater to something called Islamic financing. I don't know if you ever heard anything like that.
Islamic financing?
Yes.
Okay.
Apparently Islam has problems with banks and lending and earning interest on loans. So you kind of have to jump through hoops to cater to their religious beliefs on how you can, like, say, charge a mortgage and charge interest, because you can't really charge interest. So basically you have to buy the house and then rent it back to them at a higher rate so that you still make money as a bank, just to get around that stuff.
What the freaking circus? What are we doing?
So for me, when we have to discuss that at work, it's really hard for me to, not like say something like, this is completely ridiculous. We're jumping through hoops and we're wasting a lot of money and time just to cater to some weird mysticism belief.
What if that guy, the Pastafarian guy, I forget what country he was in, but he won the legal battle to wear the spaghetti strainer over his head as a religious act on his driver's license. Did you ever read that story? I think you can still Google it. And he did it as a joke. He did it as a joke, but he actually did it half seriously, because he's thinking, if all these other chowder heads out there get to do whatever whacked out stuff they want to do in the name of religion, in the name of the almighty flying spaghetti monster, I want to wear a pasta strainer on my head when I get my driver's license photo taken, and he won a legal battle to do so. So, so if these people show up and everybody decides they're going to just make up their own rules, before you know it, we're all doing backflips over what should be a relatively simple procedure. But you can't say anything, right? Because then they are discriminated against, correct?
Exactly, and there's a diversity thing that we have to kind of cater to too, and it's really hard just to stay quiet at work about this kind of stuff and be positive about it and propose new solutions for it and blah blah blah.
Well, for what it's worth, at this second, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people who agree with you that this is nuts. Okay?
Yep. Absolutely.
If it helps, thanks for calling. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Seth.
860. Thanks for your patience on hold. Who's this?
Hey, Seth, this is Ralph, and I appreciate what you said about your job and your livelihood, because my livelihood was taken away by a church lady.
What happened?
It's one of these stereotype women, the black Southern women who wear the big hats in church. Yeah. And we would have these one-on-one meetings, and she would talk about church and that you have to have faith. And it was a corporate job, and I have 3 kids and a mortgage, and I was laid off by this woman. I mean, I can't prove a religious thing, and I mistakenly didn't go to HR because I was so frightened. I should have complained about the things she did. She put the Jesus fish at the end of her emails. When we had to use a password to all go to the same website, her password was John 3:16. And she kept saying things about the power of prayer. And in retrospect, I should have gone to HR, but I was so intimidated and thought that HR, always sides with managers that I didn't do it, and eventually I lost my job.
Did you say I'm an atheist or I don't believe it? What happened?
I didn't state that, but she may have found out from coworkers, who snitch or
you got a Facebook page like the rest of us, and all you have to do is take a
I went to talk to lawyers, and because it was a big corporation, the lawyers were too scared, and they said, you don't have enough to go on to sue them.
Well, and how do you prove it? I mean, they can say it was any number of, well, you didn't do this right, you didn't follow this procedure, you didn't fill out this form, you were late, they can decide essentially what the rules are. Then it becomes your word versus them. And a lot of attorneys, a lot of people in the legal profession simply say it's very rare that you could go in and win a case.
Yeah, that's what happened. So the only thing in 2020 hindsight, I should have gone to the company HR, but like I said, I was too intimidated.
Well, you doing okay now, may I ask? You still
No, I'm still unemployed, so she took away my livelihood.
You were a good worker, right?
Yeah, I was. Very good. Everybody loved me, but I ran into the buzzsaw of the religious hat lady.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that it happened to you, but I'm glad to hear a perspective that other people, another example that it does exist, and it's something to be on the lookout for. Thanks for the call. Very much appreciated.
Thanks, Seth.
Yeah, take care. Dustin sent an email in. He said 5 words: separation of church and state. Dustin says, is there any other place aside from institutions like the DMV that are more state than the workplace? We go, we get paid by the employer pays taxes, we pay taxes, it's all government regulated, and yet religious folks will traipse Religious folks will traipse around with their Love Jesus shirts and cross necklaces, and hell is hot except Jesus coffee mugs, and everyone is forced to look the other way. See, there's an inherent contradiction in the terms Christian and separation of church and state. According to the Bible, one of the commandments of Jesus directly before he ascended, one of his commandments of Jesus to the apostles was, quote, to go into all the world and make disciples. When Christians bust into the workplace covered in their God goo and Jesus juice, they think they're doing what's commanded of them. Christians can't comprehend the idea of separating themselves from any institution, because Jesus himself basically said, take me with you everywhere you go, and use this book to beat people over the head. Dustin continues. The workplace says you can't talk about religion. Don't worry, they'll find a way to sneak in a cross here and a Jesus loves you there. Workplace completely removes religion from the workplace. Don't worry about that either. They'll become offended, sue, and say the workplace is impeding on their religious rights. The inherent problem with keeping religion separate from state is this. Christianity insists that you have to take Jesus everywhere, and that includes the state. The state can't separate itself from religion without allowing it to take over the state itself, and Christians only see it as they're doing their Christian duty in a country where they're free to practice their religion. Thanks for the message, Dustin. That's a great point that I've tried to make in the past. They believe that everything they do, right, whatever you do in word or deed, you must do to the glory of Jesus Christ. Whatever you do, there is no separation. And I think that's tremendously accurate. They don't see a line between our politics and their God. They don't see the workplace and their God, the educational system and their God, the science books that we use to teach our children and their God, being a good neighbor, going to a cookout and their God. God must jump over whatever line there is. God must be involved and out front and center everywhere they are, whatever they do in word or deed. What a great point. Let's go back to the phones. 804, thanks for your patience on hold. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hi, Seth. This is Nicole.
Hi, Nicole. What's going on?
I actually had a question for you. Earlier, you had said, the small things like prayers tacked up in cubicles or whatever don't bother you. And really and truly, they don't bother me very much either. But I want to know if it bothers you. The same thing that bothers me is the double standard. The fact that, let's say I wanted to put up that lovely message Adam Savage gave us at Reason Rally.
Yeah.
If I wanted to tack that up and the religious person comes around the corner and sees that, then they're going to have a problem with it.
I absolutely think that if they are allowed to decorate their workspace, as long as there aren't clients traipsing in left and right, I mean, if it's their space that they're going to occupy within reason, by the same token, here's a great example. Anyone who enjoys my page normally is probably like you and me. We like irreverent humor. We enjoy the Jesus jokes, right? Well, right. I was in New Orleans years and years and years ago on a video shoot, and we stopped by some gift shop somewhere over at the French Quarter, and they had a little plastic dashboard Jesus on sale. It was one of those little plastic toys that's on a spring. And it's dashboard Jesus Enlightenment on a spring. Well, I bought him, and he's still in the box, and he sits in my office. Now, I put him in there. Now, I have thought about that. It's making fun of Jesus. Do other people, are they offended by it when they walk in? Do they think it's funny? Am I being disrespectful? But the reason I've kept it up, and it's not that big a deal, but the reason I've kept it up is because, if they're going to hang crosses and whatnot, well, within reason, I should be able to hang up my stuff, right? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I guess the thing is, I'm the person that's afraid I'm going to get in trouble. And that's just me being someone
it's
that
not
doesn't
just
want
you.
to rock the boat,
It's not just you. And it's a shame. It has to be there are times when I think it's inappropriate. Look, if I was to bring in something that was just overtly offensive. And I don't mean just an Adam Savage quote, which is, I think, a tremendously positive poster, or even something that's just kind of funny. You know, you bring in a Jesus fish with little Darwin feet on it and put it up, or a famous quote from Christopher Hitchens that's got kind of some teeth in it. But if you were to bring in something that was overtly offensive, you know, you've got something that it's just honestly in poor taste, especially for a professional workplace environment, then I don't think that is appropriate. I don't think I should be able to put that up. And my goal, honestly, is not to make people feel bad. I don't want to create an environment where everybody walks by and they don't want to be around me. I still want to be the kind of person that attracts people and does not repel them. So I think everybody needs to use judgment as to what is a good way to express yourself without being a complete douchebag, you know?
Exactly. And I guess that's why I use Adam Savage quote as opposed to maybe a Dawkins or a Hitchens quote, even though they have great stuff to say too.
Yeah.
But like that quote is something that, you know, would empower me during a work day, the same as that prayer or whatever helps that person during their work day.
Hell, put up some Dawkins or Hitchens, put up some Dennett or Sam Harris, put up any of those people. I mean, I think any of that, it should be just fine. I mean, if it's your workspace and they get to hang up John 3:16, then why couldn't you put up the Dawkins quote that he's against religion because it teaches people to be satisfied with not understanding the world? It's a statement of belief. It's an opinion. It's from a credible source. It's part of your worldview. It inspires you. You leave it up. Fine. Now, if you've got, you know, like a fully naked, you know, a 3-foot plastic Jesus you know, committing lewd acts on your cubicle, you know, that may not be the most productive, most professional way to decorate your little space there. But, you know, I don't know. There are no easy answers. And a lot of it determines what's your workplace like. How many employees do you have? How much foot traffic is there? What's your supervisor like? How strict is the HR department? There are so many of these weird nebulous questions and variables floating around that everybody's situation is going to be totally unique. I mean, I don't have all the answers. All I know is that I'm still at this moment trying to figure out how do you express yourself and be real and not be fake, but to be yourself without apology, and at the same time not cause yourself to be jobless and homeless and without means when you have people to support. You know, that's a tough one. So
exactly.
Well, I appreciate you, Nicole. Thanks for an honest opinion. Thanks for a great call.
Thank you.
Take care of yourself.
You too. Bye.
Let me finish with an email from Amanda. She said, where I work, we have a small amount of staff, but surprisingly, we have a very religiously diverse staff. I work with a Jehovah's Witness. How many Jehovah's Witnesses have we heard about during this freaking show? I'm going to have to do a Jehovah's Witness podcast. She says, I work with a Jehovah's Witness whom doesn't follow her faith extremely closely. She was mainly just raised in it. A Muslim who is serious about her faith. A Christian, Baptist Christian, but is new to the faith. And then there's me, the former Pentecostal Christian, newly turned atheist, still a closet atheist to most people, including my coworkers. They knew I was a Christian, so they still assume I am, which it was never a problem. Neither were their faiths to me. We've all been open, tolerant, and accepting of each other's faiths. I've been extremely open with my Muslim coworker, as she has been with me. We really just compared our beliefs and similarities. None of my coworkers and I have been negative towards each other's beliefs, which is cool. Though I no longer believe in any sort of God or deity. I used to, and I still like to talk to people of other faiths, preferably without too much debate and tension. And lucky for me, I don't work with anyone who's extremely crazy about their beliefs, shoving them down my throat and all that comes with that. All in all, I've been lucky. No discrimination in the past. Let's just hope in the future, when I decide to come out, I'm met with the same acceptance. Thanks for all you do and your encouragement and insight. It means a lot to a new atheist who is still figuring out her religion-free wings. Sincerely, Amanda. You got wings, girl. I know exactly what that feeling is like. Like you're on the branch, right? And you just jump. And you think, well, this is going to hurt. But no, there is a happy ending, trust me, and I'm glad to hear that there have been several, not just one or two, but several people who have managed to coexist and even have good relationships with people of religion in a workplace, be able to be diverse, to be able to go in and freaking do what they're there to do your job, make some money, be productive, have a career, punch a clock, get your ass home and spend as much time as you can with the people that you love when the day is done. In the meantime, I do wish you all of the best. And if you do have another perspective on religion in the workplace, I do welcome it at my email editor at thethinkingatheist.com. Still to come later on this month, we're talking about religion and young people. If you are a youth, you're a teenager, you're someone who is dealing with religion, maybe it's a family situation, maybe it's at your school, what have you, you don't have to even give a name. But I would like your perspective. Keep them brief and send them in. Editor at thethinkingatheist.com. Have a wonderful week.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter. Watch dozens of original videos on the Thinking Atheist YouTube channel. And visit our website for resources, links, contact information, the editor's blog, and more. thethinkingatheist.com.